Welcome back to the AI-Enabled GTM. I'm very pleased today to be joined by Brent Arslaner, the CEO of Data Buddies. Brent is a serial founder, he's a tech evangelist, and a disruptor. He's a proven executive, and get this, who has scaled 6 companies, not only through extraordinary growth, but to a successful exit. You've got me by 2 there, buddy. Good work. He also
Play.
serves as an operating advisor to several technology companies. So I'm honored to have Brent as my guest today. Welcome.
Thanks, Stu. And it's a pleasure to be on, and I can tell you that a lot of my techniques and my learnings came from you. So it's a pleasure to
Well,
regroup
I'm,
with you, bud.
I'm flattered. I'm flattered. Okay, so before we dig in and start the discussion, I do have a personal request for all of our mutual thousands of friends out there. This channel is in its infancy, and we need your help to grow it. So to grow it, hit the subscribe button, click the bell if you like to do that, please, and like the video, which I'm sure you will. It's easy and free, and it really helps us out. And if you have any thoughts or, like aha moments or agreements or disagreements, during the show, please put them in the comments. We'd love to know about them. I read every single one, and they also help out the channel. So thank you. So Brent, let's dive in. Talked about this a little bit in the past, but the game has changed for software companies in the age of Gen AI. What are some of the things you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I my position. What's really interesting, and Stu, you and I lived through this, obviously, in terms of when you think about enterprise software, and I don't care if it's CRM or ERP or collaboration or virtual environments, whatever that may be. Um, the game was all about kind of the features and functionality that you built, and you would compete on price and capability. And to me, one of the things that's most interesting is that, you know, a better product, more features and functionality is just no longer good enough. I mean, there's a partner I was working with the other day. We spent a long weekend and we built a CRM system. Now, granted, it's not as good as it's not. I mean, it's not as good as Salesforce or HubSpot, but it has all the basic capabilities to manage a sales process, and integrates with the other data sources, and so that's astounding, right? That you can actually create a product, and so with that, I mean, my perspective is really that what differentiates companies today isn't the software as much as it is the data. What data is the new differentiator from my perspective, meaning that, having not just any data, but proprietary, high value data that your competitor doesn't have, that you can utilize within your sales motions, is what will be different from, again, your core competition.
Okay, that is very insightful to me. So tell me a little bit more about that. Tell me a little bit more about the data and what you do and how you use that.
Yeah, every vertical has different data, and that's only relevant to that industry, and every company has some uniqueness. Again, we know everyone's not unique, although some buyers still think that's the case. But you know, what we think a lot about is the notion of ChatGPT or Claude or whatever your tool is has an enormous amount of data. But when you think about it, in any industry, there's a finite set of really important data to help make business decisions. I don't care if that's on the revenue cycle side, if that's on the cost containment side, if that's on customer support. So, the way we look at it, and one of the projects we worked on recently um, was mapping healthcare. And so really kind of stepping away before you think about, what really cool tool you can use.
Right.
What are the most important sets of data if you're trying to sell into healthcare? What does it look like? What are the layers? And we started with, let's look at who's everyone that delivers healthcare in North America. And there's hospital systems, but there's also all these, ambulatory and imaging and assisted living and all these different things. So really trying to, I think, inventory the most relevant data sets. And then once you have that, like it's like building a house. Once you have the scaffolding, it's what are the data that you want to layer on? That could be claims data with the insurance company. That could be, social determinants of health, like when you're looking at, areas or of the community that are struggling with different issues. So the point I'm trying to make is I think we get caught up in how cool and exciting these tools are, but the boring part, which is a lot of kind of the plumbing of inventorying, cataloging, make sure you have the right data, is really important. And if you get that wrong, we used obviously the old, it's like garbage in, garbage out back in the day. Going back to data warehousing, it's the same. And in fact, you can argue it's even a bigger problem today.
I love that. I think the big insight for me is that, like you said, it's not just the tools, because frankly, especially the generic tools, they're the same for everybody. But each market, every company, every market that those companies sell into has a unique set of very foundational data that you can then use to build, right, what you're building.
Yeah, it's one of the amazing stats you've probably heard before is, like this calendar year, more data will be produced than the rest of time.
Wow.
All the day. I mean, it's overwhelming, and it's always been a problem, but it's just exacerbating based on just the volume of data that's being created on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, so give me some examples of some of the either projects or agents or
Yeah.
data-based LLMs, et cetera, that you've done or that you've seen implement.
Yeah. I know we've both for ourselves and actually for some of our clients, we have been the last kind of 18 months been trying a lot of different things within more on the agentic side.
Okay,
Um, we have we've created kind of agentic SDRs, so sales development reps,
got it.
to do prospecting,
Right.
qualification, appointment setting. So you're really just kind of personalizing emails as well as even LinkedIn connections with the purpose of setting up meetings again using Calendly and other solutions. Um, and it's interesting because it's a really spammy, busy world right now. So I think
Right.
there's always that balance of you can do volume, but you have to make sure that there's kind of a level of personalization there, or you're just
There
going
you
to get
go.
ignored. So disregarding the volume, you're just going to go right into you're going to get deleted immediately. So I think we've been, it's almost hybrid where we kind of started off fully automated. The response rates weren't necessarily there. The A/B tests weren't there. So we've incorporated more and more personalization, leveraging what we characterize as intelligent triggers, so you can kind of figure out, what are the events and it's
Well,
not a
that's
new
true.
concept. Obviously, we've talked about this forever of, what are the things that make a prospect, a really high quality prospect at a given period of time. If that's a new executive or the new opening of a store or some financial information that's, deep in an S1. So really you leveraging triggers to kind of be able to hyper personalize or personalize at scale
Okay,
is
got it.
something that we've been really working with and seeing better results than just, a standard, you know, high volume outbound engine. And then I'd say the other area that we've done some work recently too is almost agentic account managers. So really there, it's the notion of, hey, most companies and software companies too, they have a small account management team. Their only focus or their predominant focus is their largest clients. So leveraging agents that can communicate with some of maybe the less profitable or the lower revenue clients, but they can still personalize interactions on a near real time basis, even though a human is not involved. And we've actually seen a lot of that, especially where can add specific recommendations and value, has been really interesting, and I think is a great use case for agents.
I think it's a very necessary use case, frankly, because I've seen it, in so many software companies. The poor CSMs, overloaded. They can't get to everybody.
Yeah.
So they can only get to the top 10%, 20%, whatever that number is, 80/20, and then that 80% don't even get an annual call,
Yeah.
right?
You're absolutely right. I mean, it's especially again for clients when you have hundreds of thousands of customers that you have to interact with. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and that's where the automation comes in, and it the scalability goes up dramatically when you get to that. It's beautiful. All right. So, basically, let's talk about your experience in just general organizations and their ability or effectively adopting AI technologies today. What could they do either more or less of to achieve even greater outcomes and returns than they do today?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at least a lot of the peers and companies that we interact and work with, I think a lot of the adoption today is in obviously content creation. So all that, especially sales reps and even marketing, it's like nobody wants to write all of those templates and create all of again the email content and the sequences and cadences and everything. And it's laborious. So I think I think that's the first step is a lot of folks have been just creating content. And we also see obviously co-pilots are increasing in, providing kind of assisting sales, doing account research, some even lead scoring. But yeah, and you see it again on all the major platforms now. It's kind of your sidekick that can help you be a little bit more efficient. But it's really, this is inning one. Used to use the baseball analogy. I think that a lot of that too is really kind of just using technology to fit in the same process that we've been going through, which I don't think is necessarily the way it's going to play and the way it's going to work. Meaning, you shouldn't just retrofit AI into how you're already doing things with the existing sales processes, because things are changing. And in terms of, I think that it's true, and you've taught me that years ago. Of it's like prospects are 75, whatever, 80% through the buying cycle before you ever touch them. So now, if you have these amazing AI tools in which you can kind of hyper personalize very early on in the sales process, can you induce prospects to raise their hands earlier?
Yeah,
Rather than instead of waiting for them to show up whenever they are interested, and the beginning of the sales process, I think is of the sales process. I think it's very different too, from the standpoint of initial discovery, and even again strategic synergies. And I can remember, again, you and I were mind mapping all these interactions and doing really laborious research. But today there's tools where you should, going into that first meeting, you should already understand your discovery questions. Should be much less. You should understand the synergies, why they should work with you or not, um, much earlier in the sales process than what we're accustomed to, I think.
I love that. I mean, even if you still do need to do discovery now, it's much more targeted, and it's hitting the specific areas where you know that there are gaps because you've done that research.
Yeah.
So what about the people? What do you have to do with the
Hmm.
people?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's obviously a lot of noise. I think my first fundamental belief is, again, it gives, and I tell my son who's 21 and anyone else that's kind of joining the work world, I mean, it gives you superpowers. I think it's once you start playing around with all these different tools and understanding how to harness it, that's the first piece of the puzzle. Is that, I mean, that's my, I guess, lens on AI. But when I think about who the type of individuals or the characteristics that are really gonna create or make people very successful in this new era, critical thinking is unbelievably important. It's not just regurgitating. Anybody is going to be able to create, rapidly create content to communicate, but really being able to think about how to take all of this different, really powerful data and tailor it and understand how to, implement that within this new brave world and sales process is going to be critical. I think creativity, that's another piece. It can't be replicated. Coming up with creative ways to change the sales process, and really, I guess, lastly is you know understanding, or at least thinking through what the balance of automation and authenticity, because we as humans, we're pretty good. We have a pretty good sniff test around. I mean, granted, AI is getting better and better, but I think 9 out of 10 times you have a good sense: was this a human or was this a machine? And I think longer term, that's how you're going to prove it. It's the authenticity is what's going to separate an average sales rep or go to market individual from the folks that are going to become stars.
Just love that. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I subtitled this channel, um, deeply human, keeping it human. Right. And I think you've nailed something very important there, that it's not going to replace. I mean, that creativity, that critical thinking, that empathy,
Yeah.
and understanding, right? That, I just can't get with my
Yeah, it's
buddies,
I
Claude
know,
and
yeah,
ChatGPT.
we can be characterized as old school, but I mean, you can't replicate. Still, I mean, many people, again, especially in large enterprise, there still is a human relationship component. People do
There
business
is.
with people that they respect and they want to be associated with, and so that's not going to change. And in fact, I think if anything, it's becoming more important. It's actually kind of flipping back around, where they want to shake your hand. They want to look you in the
They
beads
do.
of your eyes, and make sure you have their back, because sometimes if someone's making a multi-million-dollar decision, they want to make sure you can walk the walk and you're not just really good at creating prompts.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. It goes back to what we talked about years ago, those deeply human concerns. What do people really care about? And being
Right.
able to demonstrate that you care about what they care about.
That's right.
That's
Absolutely.
huge. All right. So let's talk about the future just quickly before we wrap up. Where's the most significant opportunity for both Gen AI and Agentic AI in GTM in the future?
Yeah, I think I think it's just a transition. I think we move beyond, again, content and co-pilots, um, until we could really have a, again, automated revenue systems that continuously are sensing, analyzing, prioritizing, executing growth opportunities across the life cycle. So again, it's not just it's not autopilot, but you have a system around you that's doing, you wake up, it's doing your competitive intelligence, it's telling you what happened within the key accounts, it's explaining to you what you need to do, what are the next steps. You can accept or override or edit. But I think that's the world where we're at, or where we're heading, for sure.
Where we're heading. Absolutely. Wow, phenomenal. So, any parting thoughts or advice?
Yeah, the going back to where we started, it's like, these tools are great. Everybody wants to be AI first, um, and that's great. But what I would advocate is that, again, you have to be data first. You really have to start with: do you have unique data that is also cleansed to some degree, and what are you missing? But that's, if you can start there, and just in figuring out what are the assets, or what are the other third party data sets that you could acquire to help
Yeah,
you solve business problems. It's a
yeah.
different way of looking at it, but that's what I would advocate. And then lastly, just test, pilot, experiment at a small scale, and then once you figure out what's working, what's effective, you can do your larger rollout. But yeah, this is a fun time to experiment and try all kinds of things, basically.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
sure
it
is.
sure
It
is.
sure is. Okay, Brent, thank you. This has been super insightful. Hey, and just wrapping it up again, really encourage you all to, like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the good old bell button, and definitely send us some thoughts, send us some comments. And, if you like it, share it with your friends. We'd really appreciate that. So, with that, um, just be well, be safe, and know that you're appreciated. See you again.
Thank you, Stu.